Welcome to the Polish Podcast, a space dedicated to emboldening women in their faith and work. I'm your host, Jane Doerman. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to invite you to be a part of our Polish community. Hit that like button and subscribe to our podcast to stay updated with our latest episodes. At Polish Network, we recognize that your work is more than just a job. It's a calling. That's why we're here to provide the connections, development, and spiritual nourishment you need to flourish. Each episode delves deep into topics that resonate with our Polish community. Join us as we hear from inspiring guests who share their unique perspectives and experiences as Christian women in the workplace. No matter what brought you here today, we are thrilled to have you with us, and our aim is to ignite your passion and empower you to excel on your leadership journey. So let's dive in and explore together. We are in our final episode in our series on leading with care, and what a ride it has been. From spiritual attunement and staying curious to rethinking what success really means and building deep connections, leading with care doesn't just change us, but everyone around us too. It's about leaving a legacy that lasts, one that shapes not just our lives, but also the world. Today we have Martha Brangenberg with us, who truly embodies the spirit in her work. Martha and her husband Jim have been hosting the I Work for Him podcast for over a decade. Their goal? To turn every Christian's workplace into a mission field. Martha also launched the She Works for Him podcast, focusing on faith and work for Christian women. Martha's blend of entrepreneurial creativity and genuine care for people fuels her work at I Work for Him. However, there was a time when she sought to expand her understanding of work, particularly in integrating faith into her professional journey.
I thought the idea of a career would mean I would have a navy blue suit, I would have a briefcase, I would go to work in my heels and go to in a high rise and do my work. Like this was this visual that I had because in my mind, I really wanted to be a worker. Like that to me back in the 70s and early 80s was like my picture of what it looked like if a woman was working. And so I love numbers. I have a managerial degree and an accounting minor, and always knew that I wanted to be in that space. But I also grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So there was this lean towards what can I necessarily do that wasn't corporate. You know, I didn't know all that lingo as a teenager, but that was really what I was, I think, had tension between like, you know, how can I do something and be creative and yet, you know, I had this corporate idea really is what I thought work was. So met my husband as teenagers, and we got married pretty early while we were still in college, and discovered while we were dating that as 13-year-olds, we had both been at the same youth conference where we had both made a commitment. We did not know each other to full-time Christian service. And of course, the language at that time was like that meant you were going to be a missionary or a pastor or a youth pastor or something like that. And yet we both had this entrepreneurial desire, and to what we know now, we call it kind of like our extra spiritual gift is the gift of cleaning up messes. So we love to take things that are disorderly and bring order to them, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a business, whether it's somebody's books for their business, you know, whatever it might be, to bring it into order so that they can live in that more peacefully. And, you know, that kind of, you know, that's kind of now looking back, seeing what it's like. But it took a lot of things for us to figure out, like, what is it we're supposed to do for work versus this commitment that we made that in the you know, the 70s and early 80s was very much around the language of going overseas or working in a church and things like that. So we ran businesses. I did the books. We had a car dealership. We had a chain of insurance agencies. We had a consulting firm that did like bookkeeping and not really marketing back then, but, you know, it was kind of like clip art kind of things, you know, it was marketing back then. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like, sure, I can do that. You know, just whatever was needed to help people succeed at whatever they were doing. And when I turned 40, we started to have this conversation about what the Bible has to say about work, and that maybe we really were living out our mission and our calling in the workspace we were already in. We were still struggling with well, when are we going to finally do what God called us to do? We tried to go to seminary, all different things. And I say we because I have had the pleasure of walking this journey with my husband.
Yeah.
God has had us on this trajectory together. And I just feel very blessed by that. So that's kind of the context to that. But didn't go to seminary. Our pastors were like, yeah, I don't think that's what you're called to do. But they didn't know to say, but you're called in your work that you do. And you have 1,000 clients in your insurance agency. Serve them as you would if they were the church. We did that, but we didn't have the words around it, So it's
right.
Fast forward, as we started to learn that, then ultimately God put that mantle on us. We both, if you ever do the Strength Finders, responsibility is very high for both my husband and I. And so what we see now is that we felt very responsible for taking this message of God created us for the work that we do. He gave us this opportunity to be in a mission field that a pastor can't be in, helping people with an insurance claim or helping them with whatever, to the point of then understanding that this really is our mission field and other people need to understand they're in their mission field as well. And so that led to a radio show that we thought was kind of a hobby, that it was okay, we're going to do this because we think this is a good way to tell more than one or two people at a time.
Right.
Because that was really our thing. It's well, we can mentor, we could have a round table, we could help a few businesses, which we did, but we're Lord, how do we help thousands of people to know this? Because the whole world, all Christ followers need to understand that their workplace is their mission field. And that led to the radio show. And now we've just celebrated our 11th year of so much more than a talk show, but that is, kind of the label that it all falls under.
Martha's story hits home because let's be real. Most of us wrestle with figuring out how God wired us and what that means for his plans for us. Maybe it's time to think outside the box and reimagine the mission field. Well, we're going to go take a short break, but when we come back, Martha's going to dive into how she sees leading with care as a wholehearted way to lead. So stick around. Are you tired of dreading Mondays? Does the mere thought of another workday fill you with anxiety and frustration? If you find yourself nodding along, then our I Hate My Job devotional resource is precisely what you need. We deeply understand the challenges of feeling trapped in a job that drains your energy and leaves you feeling unfulfilled. Our I Hate My Job resource isn't just a guide. It's a week-long devotional designed to offer you a renewed perspective as you navigate through work challenges. Packed with insights and revelations, this resource has brought hope and transformation to countless individuals facing similar battles. Visit polishnetwork.org today to download this free resource and start your journey toward a more fulfilling work life. Do you have any pivotal moment in your career journey where you realize the profound impact that leading with care has in the workplace?
It's amazing how I think a lot of women especially fall into this, where we don't really realize that we've moved into a position of leadership because our role may not say that, our title may not, or we may not feel like we have, we all, whether we know the words or not, we suffer with imposter syndrome and I'm not a leader. But, as I look back on the things that God put in my life and the things that he allowed me to experience, there were some pivotal moments in just embracing that leadership and how I needed to care for people. I was running a Christian retail establishment for a decade, and I had several employees that I was responsible for. And it was about the same time that we were having this aha moment that I Work for Him was birthed, and all of that was happening in our personal lives. And so I really got to be like this practitioner, right? In the space of saying, okay, what does this look like? And it was a Christian retail establishment. So like it was a church bookstore, 2,000 square foot. At the peak, I had like 17 employees that I was managing. And I really realized that this was what God had given me to steward in that season. And how am I stewarding it well? It wasn't my own organization, but I treated it like it was.
Sure.
I didn't own the bookstore, but I managed it for the church. And I just really, as I was having the pivotal moments in my own personal life of saying, what does this look like to live out my faith every day in what I'm doing, and seeing this as my mission field, I really got to practice that with my employees and say, what does this look like to see them as my ministry, and to see them as how, to feed into them and the people that come through the doors. There was logic in the customer side of it, because that's what we were there for as a bookstore, to be to meet people's needs and to help them with where they're at. And, but to really take that to a different level and say, it's the, God had me there to lead these people and to care for them along the way. So that was quite a great journey, and really changed how I look at managing people and feeding into them and caring for them.
Yeah, that's especially in retail, that is, I feel like, a superpower skill set to have. I've worked in a number of different retail positions. Some I was supervisor, but and actually it's kind of funny. Fun fact: I worked at a Christian bookstore too, locally here in Cincinnati when I first moved here, and it was it was a job to get me to, as I was applying for like media jobs and stuff around, but I resonate with especially that responsibility where we did have customers come in, and I remember this one time this woman came in and she was in tears because her marriage was crumbling, and she was like, something needs to change, and I just I don't know, that's a holy moment. I don't know, that I've always just kind of remembered, where I remember God saying, see, your work does matter. Because I think sometimes in retail, for me personally, it was, I struggled like, well, this is not where I want to be, but so why am I still here? Why have you not opened the door? But like, he showed me in those instances where like, I've assigned you to this spot for this season to steward it. And what I'm hearing you say is, you took on that challenge to be like, you know what, I don't own the store, but I'm managing it. And this is the role that I've been given. And how can I steward this well? How can I meet the needs of the people that work for me? How can I meet the needs of the clients or customers that come in? And not just in that bookstore, but in all the work that you've done, especially in the work that you're doing today. And I'm curious, in essence, with Leading with Care now, leading with care in the podcasting world. And I mean, I know you do more than just your podcast show. You do so much more than that. And I'm curious as to what Leading with Care means to you now, currently in the work that you're doing, and how does that play out in your day-to-day work interactions?
That's a great question. So in, the structure of actual work, we use contractors. And so a lot of people don't even build relationships with their contractors,
Sure.
in a sense, because it's like they just have a task to get done. And I don't see it that way at all. And so one of the things that we've really incorporated into our DNA, because we learned it actually at a Kingdom at Work event, is this whole idea of one-on-ones and spending time really getting to know the people that you're working with. So I meet weekly with, there's occasions where we can't because of schedule,
Sure.
but the intention is to meet weekly to really spend time talking about life. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I pray for you? What are you struggling with? And then we do, because it's contractors and you're using that time, we do also then go over, okay, what have we not dealt with on the day-to-day basis? You talk with an email people all the time, but it's so different than having a conversation over Zoom where you can sit in, because we're not in the same state even. But to have that interaction and say, what's going on? How is your little boy? His birthday's coming up. How's this, thing that at church, or this neighbor that you talked about that you invited for Christmas, did that lead anywhere? Have you, whatever that might be, that builds that relationship very intentionally, but very authentically. This isn't just to, I've checked a box. And I feel like that's the biggest way right now that I care and show that care, is building that trust in that relationship. So when something does go on, it's not this big surprise, right? For number one, and they know that I'm a trusted person that they can come to. I pray with them. I encourage them. I challenge them. I give them grace when I know they're going through something that we've talked about, and it's like, okay, now Thursday's that appointment. So I'm not going to be as productive on Thursday or whatever, because I'm dealing with this, whatever that might be. But that authentic relationship where you care about the person, in our, one of the things that out of life we have incorporated into the I Work for Him podcast is something we call the I Work for Him Nation. And really it's this idea that people make a commitment to this covenant. And it's not like a club. It's not, pay for it or anything. But basically what you're learning is this revelation that I get to know the people that I work with. And then I start to pray for them myself, and they don't know that. And then take it a step further and say, I've been praying for you. Is there anything specific going on in your life that you would like prayer about? And then going above and beyond the things that you do in your work to help them. So like if you see them in crisis with a deadline or whatever, you pick up some slack or just, maybe it's taking the trash out or, things that aren't part of your role, but that help care for somebody else, that it's their role, whatever that might be. Getting to know those people that you work with outside of work, right? Again, this whole idea that if I really know who you are as a person and you come in and your demeanor is different, I know that something's going on and that I care enough to ask you how you're doing. And I really want an answer. And then always working with excellence. So these are just steps. Oh, and praying with the people. So not just saying, hey, I'll pray for you, but can we pray right now? Can I? And so, sometimes we need to make a commitment to that so that we have a little bit of a challenge. And so to me, like that's caring in its finest sense, because we've gotten to know the person, care for them, show that we love them, and go in above and beyond, and then praying with them when it doesn't have to be a hard time. It could be a good time too, right? Like rejoicing about something good that's happened in their life. So, but definitely when there's hard things coming, that they know they have a safe place to go where they're going to be cared for. And that concern is even going to be cared, right? That it's going to be held very gently in the hands of that person, which for me is me.
Yeah. No, what I hear you saying, and I've heard this theme throughout all the conversations for this month in regards to leading with care, it's just this idea of like noticing and, noticing the needs of your people, noticing what makes them tick, noticing what makes them come alive in their work, or noticing when they're struggling. And that takes this level of intentionality. And I don't know if you're familiar. I just read this book a couple months ago called Unreasonable Hospitality. It kind of rocked my world. It's very much focused on the restaurant industry, but these principles that this restaurant in particular put into action was noticing how they could surprise and delight the people that went to or that came to their restaurant. But not only that, how can they surprise and delight and create structures within their management style at the restaurant for their workers so that, the servers, the chefs, the bus boys or bus girls, everybody within the DNA of this organization, this restaurant felt cared for. And just, it was so inspiring to me to see a leader notice, things, talents and skills and passions that they all had. And just, I see that level of care, of noticing, of that intentionality, of this opportunity we have to like surprise and delight not only the people that we serve through the work that we're doing, but also like you said, with your contracted workers. Like I hear that, I know some contracted workers, and it feels like this very, I don't know, one-sided relationship where like, well, they give me the project, I do it, I give it back, but like what I'm hearing
money. They do what they do, so I give them money. Like it's
exactly
this exchange. Yeah.
And I feel like I've felt this tension, and I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about this, but this tension of like, well, I have to have separation of my work life and my personal life. Like they just don't mix. And when I go home, like at night from my 9-to-5 job or whatever work looks like, I'm done. And I'm not gonna, and I'm not gonna open up at work about what's going on because they don't care, or at least that's like a mentality that we can have. I don't know. Do you have any insights or, I don't know, challenges for someone who might be walking in that tension?
Yeah, I think you got to realize that it's not possible. It's not possible to segment your life. It's much like this conversation about faith and work.
Yeah.
If Jesus Christ really changed my life, I can't segment that. I can't turn him off between 9 to 5,
right,
or whatever those hours might be. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't 9 to 5 actually be? Sorry, that's just a little.
No, I love that. I love that.
We all refer to that, but it's like, yeah, that's really a dream, right? But,
yes.
But anyway, just this whole idea that if we are authentically changed by the work that Jesus Christ has done in our life, that doesn't get turned off. And the same is true of our motherhood, of our, caring for our home, of our being a daughter or a son, or, that has a responsibility that someone else is leaning on you for. It is not possible. Yet we need to respect the boundaries of work, but at the same time, we are still the same. We are that mother, that daughter, that neighbor, that friend while we're at work as well. So I think realizing that those things are impacting who we are, and they're impacting the work that we're doing, and we want to do the best work possible. So in my mind, the best way to be authentic is to let people know what's going on in your life. Not for the purpose of wasting time at work, not for the purpose of making excuses, but they're not all of a sudden surprised when something is going on and they're like, we had no idea you were dealing with that, So in our casual conversations, in the work that we're doing, be like, okay, well, I'm caring for my in-laws and we're working on new hearing aids and, whatever that might be. So that, sometime when I need to go to the audiologist, it's not, it's like, what? Why are you doing that? Whatever it might be, a crisis that happens in your town, if that's affecting you, being able to just share that with your coworkers so that they know what's going on in your life and how you can be best supported. I think that's huge. I think that it goes both ways. And if you're leading, to be authentic with those that you are leading, and also those that are leading you, both at every angle, that they know you're a real person dealing with real things. And again, just that whole balance, and I hate to use the word balance because
it's okay.
I really don't think we can balance. I love the teeter-totter, but I can guarantee you as a kid, I'm only, you and I are similar in our verticalness, and we didn't have the same amount of trajectory on the balance beam.
It's true.
This teeter-totter as others did. So anyway, but just being real so that when there are things that happen, good or bad, people around us aren't surprised, and they know how to support us, and the same for them, that we're just building that level of authenticity in our relationship. If we just keep closed-mouthed, then it's just like, what are you hiding? What is your secret? To me, it's not authentic. And if you're going to care for the people around you, you need to be authentic and be real and be who you are.
And it really just, this authenticity piece and our vulnerability, our willingness to even just be vulnerable, not necessarily sharing every single, thing about your life, but, being real with people to say, like, I have a family member that's going through surgery today, and that's going to be a major impact on our family, and this surgery is needed. And so it's just one of those, like, communicating that and just saying, hey, not that I won't be as available, but just this is happening on in the background. And so if something happens and I need to pivot, it's opening this conversation up to create understanding and clear communication. And I agree with you. I think it shows our humanity through it all. While responsibility is like a core value to me, and it can kind of fuel my perfectionism sometimes, it's this grace to be like, it's okay. And I think that really opens this door to leading with care and allowing, because I feel like this leading with care is a relationship too, where, like, as the leader, you want to lead and care for your assigned employee, but your employee also has to receive that care, right? Like, they have to be open to that care that you're offering to them.
In the retail space, one of the things that it's funny that you said what you said about your history in retail, because I always knew that my workers this wasn't their lifelong career, right?
Yeah.
To work with me in this part-time, because none of them were full-time. It was all part-time.
Sure.
So I took it on as my goal, and this is another thing that I feel like was leading with care, is I took it on as my goal to make them a really good employee, like to give them the skills at entry level that could help them to be successful in whatever their future jobs were. So setting up good habits and setting up good expectations. And I tried to make the bar really high so that when they would go somewhere else, they would expect that their boss would get to know them. They would expect that their boss would talk to them on a weekly basis and get, all, because I felt like if they have a healthy workplace, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but my goal was for it to be healthy so that they would have experienced that. So they could be able to tell in the future, like, this doesn't feel right. This isn't, they don't really care, or, they just want the work done. Whatever those thoughts might be, that they have something, a bar to judge it against and be discerning. And so I did a lot of conversations with my employees around that as well, because I cared for their future. I didn't just care for that they were there in this shift on Saturday, but that they would, really set themselves up as good employees. And I articulated that. And I think that's important too, not just, well, why is she being that way? Why is she, that kind of manager? Because they may not be able to put the words to it, but I would say, I'm doing this because I want you to be the best employee possible, not just for me, but for your future employees. And to me, that was like, that's like, parenting, right?
Yeah.
I'm teaching you this skill so that you can be the best adult you can be someday. I'm teaching you how to judge character. I'm teaching you how to, what integrity looks like. I'm teaching you, whatever those values are that you're wanting to instill that in them, not just for while they're under your roof, but for their whole life. And so that kind of care is very intentional, but it goes on way past when they're working for you. And that to me is exciting, because it's not just I got to do this while I'm here at this job, but I see value in being this way no matter where I am.
And that's a lasting legacy that you are leaving as a manager, as a leader, is having that perspective shift, right? Like it's like you were saying, like these are part-time workers that I have, and is this going to be their last job? No. So how am I cultivating within them this idea of what a good leader looks like, and prepping them for the next step in their career journey, whatever that looks like. And I just see this legacy, if we could just shift our perspective as leaders in that way, what an impact we could have in the work world, whatever that looks like, entrepreneur or, traditional corporate, ministry, nonprofit. Like, what would it look like for us as leaders to have that mindset that really is just like, you know what, my job is to instill in you lessons that I've learned about integrity. I see that. I agree with you. I see that in parenting. I have younger kids, and I would say we're in a very active season of parenting, just with all the different ages and stages of life. But I'm also feeling that as my oldest, he's going to be starting middle school next year, and I'm already sensing that shift, of like, oh, you're ready for more mature, conversations type thing, and just, I don't know, having that authenticity, that intention, and that noticing, again, coming back to that just idea of noticing the needs that each individual has on our team. And, golly, what an honor and a privilege it is to be in those positions, and how we need to embrace this idea of leading with care so deeply. I don't know.
Yes. Well, I think that if we're really caring for the people because we care for them, right? It's like this dual thing in here. It's like we're doing that because we really care for you. Then that goes beyond any, checklist or anything like that, where they know that they were cared for in that position. And ultimately, to the point of, if it's no longer a good fit, my belief is that you care enough for somebody that in a perfect world, they fire themselves. That they realize they're no longer a good fit, or that their skills are not really aligned with what the job is, because you've had honest conversations. You've given feedback. You've cared for them. And you're not just this meanie that's coming in and saying, you know what, you just can't work here anymore. It's like, do you think that the things we've experienced and the things we've worked on are working? Are we making progress? Are we gaining ground? And, really having those kinds of conversations, if you care for them, like we're saying, if it's truly authentic, then their response is going to be so different. I had that experience where I'd built a relationship with a gal that was working for me, and there were things that just were not working out. But it was no surprise to her, because I cared enough to communicate even when it was hard, and not, surprise her. She fired herself. I was ready to, terminate her. And she came in my office and she says, I don't think I should be working here anymore.
Wow.
And it was like, that is the way it should be. Like they, that you've had that conversation enough that they see that it isn't working, and it's not a surprise. And I also feel that same way. I don't know anymore, like what most people do for performance reviews, but it used to be that you had an annual review. Right. And sometimes you had no idea what your boss was going to say to you for that annual review, or how they were going to grade you. And my belief was there should never be a surprise. Like they should already know every single thing that we're going to address, because we talk about it weekly. We talk about it often. Like there's no surprises. How horrible to be working somewhere and not know what your boss thinks of you. Like that's just terrible. I mean, I hear all the jokes now that, there's weekly performance reviews, because we want immediate feedback all the time.
Exactly.
But that's ultimately, there shouldn't be a need for an annual review, right? Because you're constantly caring for them and saying, you know what, we're falling short in this area. How can I help you? What do you need? What tools do you need to improve? because that's not what I've hired you to do, whatever it is, but it's doing it out of care. I had to have a tough conversation recently with somebody about something where they were falling short. And I said to them, I said, this was a situation where they didn't really know me very well, but I said, you don't know me very well, but I care enough that I'm willing to have this hard conversation. And I hope that you see it's because I care and that I can't just leave it unsaid. I didn't want to have that conversation. I don't like confrontation. I am like the last person, it's like, that is not what I like at all. But
No.
I knew it was important because if I didn't show care if I just let it keep happening.
Sure.
And so, but that's how I led with it. I was like, I hope you see that I care enough to have this really hard conversation. And I didn't know that God was going to give me a recent example to use on your show, but I guess if for no other reason, that's why he gave it to me. But, it helped me to grow as well as a leader because I don't like to do those things, but I know that they're a necessary part of, again, keeping an authentic relationship.
Yeah. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? I was sharing with someone recently, just, there's some things I need to be preparing for, future talks that I'm doing later this month. And I'm like, every time I have an opportunity to share something, God also has me go through it in that season, and so, I really appreciate your authenticity and your vulnerability in sharing that, because I think as leaders, we can all agree we don't like dealing with conflict. I mean, and the ones that do, like, more power to you, but it's hard. It's hard. And I can see, especially just through this conversation now, how that foundation of building that culture of trust, of honesty, even with someone that maybe you have just met or you're still building that relationship with. I think that's a piece too that shows, hey, I care enough to have this conversation with you, even though we don't know each other as well yet. But hopefully this is another step in that direction of building that firm foundation of trust as we learn to lead with care. We're going to push pause on the conversation to clue you in on upcoming ways to engage with the Polished Network, but don't go too far. When we return, Martha's taking a spin in our Ask Me Anything hot seat, so stay tuned. Recent reports indicate that isolation, loneliness, and lack of leadership growth opportunities weigh heavily on working women today. And these are just some of the many reasons why the Polished Network is on a mission to embolden women in their faith and work. And we invite you to join us as a Polished partner. Visit polishednetwork.org/give and help us ensure a steady foundation for women to find the vital community they crave, the professional development they deserve, and the gospel they need. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Polished Podcast. We hope you're enjoying the conversation we're having today with our guest, Martha Brangenberg. But now it's time to add a dash of spontaneity and a sprinkle of fun. It is time for Ask Me Anything. So, Martha, this is how Ask Me Anything works. It's a chance for us to peel back the layers and get to know the woman behind the work and the quirks behind your expertise. I'm going to ask you a few questions that I've curated for you, and we're just going to follow our curiosity to learn more about you. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Yes. These are the questions on the show that I kind of throw at you. I don't give you to prepare, but I think you'll be able to handle it just fine,
Perfect.
fine. Especially as a fellow podcaster, some of these are a little podcast related because I'm just always curious to learn, just to learn other podcasters' creativity process in planning and scheduling. But question one. Could you share a memorable moment or interview from your podcasting career that's had a significant impact on you?
Oh my goodness, so many. So
I know.
we have done over, I think we're on our main podcast, over 2,000 podcasts, and all the other ones, several hundred. So probably getting close to 2,500 interviews and podcasts that we've done. So there's, I would say, well, one of our all-time favorites that just was a memorable thing is bringing two bicycle ministries on the air with us that didn't know each other. And when I say bicycle ministries, one was providing bicycles for people to get jobs in Florida.
Oh, cool.
A bicycle is a good form of transportation all year round. So they would take broken down bikes and teach people how to fix them up, and then they would get the bike to go get a job and have transportation. So there were two ministries similar to each other in Tampa Bay where we were at the time, and we brought them into the studio for live radio. Jim opens the show with "I Want to Ride My Bicycle," the song, the theme song.
Yes.
And then we always ask our guests, like, tell us your Jesus story. Tell us how you got to, know Jesus. And the one gentleman starts off and he says, well, I was on an LSD trip and Jesus intersected my LSD trip.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of a different story that I'd never heard before. And so,
sure.
We're on live radio. Like, there's no editing. There's no, you got to put your jaw back up. And it was great because it was like this authentic moment that Jesus can meet people anywhere they are and make himself real to them. And so that's like right up there. That is a highlight of hearing that authentic message and Jesus shifted this guy's life. He went on to say that he started reading his Bible, and the Bible said to help the least of these. So he was like, how can I do that? So that's how this bicycle ministry got started. He actually said on the radio in that interview, he goes, but I was reading my Bible and I was looking around and Christians weren't doing the things that the Bible said to be doing. And it was like this mic drop moment, that it was, he said what a lot of us see, I'm reading my Bible and I'm trying to do what it's saying to do. And yet I didn't see people living that out. So I felt like I had to pick up the slack and what can I do to help the least of these? And so it was, to me, that whole episode was like this big learning moment for the listeners, that was so, I don't think anybody else could have said it. He said it from authenticity. And so there you go. There's my memorable episode.
Yeah, that certainly is memorable. I think that is awesome. That is so cool that you were able to even have that conversation. And golly, I agree. Jesus, nothing can stop Jesus when he's on mission to capture your heart and pursue you, for sure.
Amen.
Not even an LSD trip. That is so funny. Oh my gosh. Well, could you, we are, as podcasters, we're like in this realm of content creation as well. And I'm always curious, could you share any insights to your creative process when you develop either a new podcast episode or a series? I don't know. Do you do like series or how do you approach that?
We have played around with series. We've done the gamut where we've tried. So we have a daily 1-minute power thought radio show that's also a podcast, played across the country on music stations. Like it's like to help you get ready for work in the morning. It's like, here's your 1-minute power thought. And we've tried to do the blog, the full episode podcast, and the 5 daily power thoughts, have them all have a theme. We've done that for seasons. That's more challenging, to get all of that to line up, because some of that has to be done way ahead of time. And how do you, all the things logistically.
All the things.
But honestly, what we have found to be incredibly successful is to, based on who the guest is, creating an outline of questions. My husband has a prophetic gift of asking questions that he doesn't even know he needs to be asking.
Interesting.
And so he will write the questions, give the guest the outline, but always preface it with, we want to allow the Holy Spirit to speak through this episode to the listeners. And this may take a different turn. It may,
Sure.
we may go on a rabbit trail, or we may just, camp on one of these questions longer, and that's okay. We may not get to it all. So really, I think that's the biggest thing, is saying, okay, here's some structure, but Lord, we do not want to be in the way of what you want to have happen. And we want to trust you and believe that you have the best outcome out there. So I think our guests appreciate the content, the intentionality around the questions, but then realizing that, hey, it might go off, and it's going to be something that we're already, we're talking about. So it's not going to be this big surprise. We've never been ones to, I know these are fun questions, but never been ones to be like, so tell me about that, whatever you did, that pulling something out of the closet,
Right.
So,
no,
that's not our approach.
No. And I, it's not lost on me that podcasters like you or myself or others in this realm, especially, faith-oriented podcasters, I'm sure you feel this responsibility. God's using your voice, and there's an element of submission to that too. I when I prepare for these episodes too, I mean, even behind the scenes, I prepared other questions for you, Martha, but we camped out and went kind of on a rabbit trail, and it was fine. And that's honestly, in those moments, what the Holy Spirit's teaching me is just trust me and follow the curiosity. And that's what we do. And that's like a release, because I tend to be a personality where when I do all the preparation, no, this was the plan.
Yeah.
This was the plan. And God's like, throw the plan out. It was good that we had the plan. It's not lost on me that there's this element totally of the preparation and the submission to where the Holy Spirit leads the conversation. And I hear that through you and Jim, through your show and the guests that you have on. And I just really appreciate that approach that you both take in that preparation and the creation.
And I would just add to that, though, that there are sometimes questions that really need to be asked.
Sure.
And so, the challenge is that ability then to come back and say, okay, but I really want to hear the answer to this. So let's get to it. I want to hear your heart on this. What do you have to say? What's the Lord teaching you or showing you or whatever? So that's the challenge. And, we don't mean it this way, but my husband and I, it's kind of like we're good cop, bad cop. He pokes the bear. And
it's funny.
But in a way that people are like, I really want to answer this question. This is a hard question. Nobody's ever asked me this before, but it's a really good question. And we talk about it. And then I have this ability to kind of wrap my arm around it and bring it back in and be like, thank you for sharing that, or, whatever it is that we need in the context of that to make it feel good. And that's something that God just gave us. That is not, I don't think you can consider it a learned behavior.
Sure.
It's something that we just realize it works in the talking space. And that God gifted us that way. And we've had almost 38 years of marriage to practice,
wow.
Small group conversation, whatever that might be, that has led us to being able to do that. But, we have that little bit of an advantage there with another mind, going, okay,
sure.
I'm going to go this way. And sometimes I have no idea where that next question came from. And it's like, okay, Lord, but what does the listener need to hear from this? And that's where, he gives me that time of discernment where I can bring it back to the listener. And that's really fun when you see that happen.
Yeah, no, it is fun. It is fun. It's fun to listen to it. It's fun to experience it. And I think it's just really cool how God has built both you and Jim to complement each other in that way. And it comes through in the work that you do for sure. My final question for you, a little lighthearted. Do you have a favorite hobby or pastime outside of your professional life? And how does it bring you joy?
Oh my goodness. I have a bunch of dreams of hobbies.
Okay.
But currently, the hobby that I've been taking part in is really remodeling.
Really?
We bought a 140-year-old building that we turned into our headquarters. And Jim and I did a large majority of the work ourselves. Our son-in-law and his dad helped with quite a bit. And then we hired a few contractors to do. Like, I don't want to look at sheetrock and say, wow, I did a bad job. So there were a few things that we had other people do, but we spent
Absolutely.
a year renovating a building. And now I just got a little, what we call a cottage. Some people would call a she shed or a garage or whatever you want to call it, a fun space to do hobbies in.
That's
but
cool.
Honestly, I've been wiring the electrical outlets. I've been designing board and batten and helping put in windows and, and it's really fun to see how you can make that stuff happen, and put and make it look pretty and pick out colors and stuff. So that's been for this season. On my wish list is a laser engraver. I really want to get into laser engraving.
Oh, interesting.
So now that I have my space finished, maybe that will be my next hobby.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to have to email you after this about your she shed. I keep telling my husband I need one, and he's like, keep dreaming.
It's good to have dreams.
It's good to dream. I'm just going to be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. So someday. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing just a little bit more about you and your work and your passions with us, Martha. And here's the thing, friends, we want you to be a part of the conversation too. We want your questions and your curious musings and your wild wonderings about our guests. So if there's just something you've always wanted to ask, now's your chance. You can learn more on how to do that by going to polishnetwork.org and click on the podcast page. Be a podcast MVP and submit those questions today. Leadership isn't just about authority. It's about leaving a legacy that ignites others' passions and ambitions. While a legacy unfolds over a lifetime, the path to greatness starts with leading others with enthusiasm. Join us at Polish this month as we explore the power of leading with enthusiasm. With longer days and brighter spirits, summer is the perfect time to infuse your leadership style with a sunny disposition. Let's explore how your enthusiasm can be a catalyst for others to dream bigger, learn more, achieve more, and evolve into their best selves. Visit our website at polishnetwork.org to learn more about the local chapter near you. Let's embrace the creative energy of enthusiasm and lead with passion and purpose. What actionable steps could our listeners take to incorporate the principle of leading with care into their own leadership roles or their work environments?
I think the thing that comes to mind is what I touched on earlier with our I Work for Him Nation. Mm-hmm. And it's a very practical thing you can do yourself, and then you can share it with other people, but they don't even need to know that you've committed to it. So if you go to iworkforhim.com, which is him.com, and then join the nation, there's a tab for that, and you can click on it. And essentially, it gives you this covenant with the 5 steps that says, I am going to commit to praying for my coworkers and employees every day. I'm going to commit to going above and beyond what my job expects me to do. Those things that I listed earlier are all on there. And the reason that this is such a simple step, but we know that it works, is number one, God showed it to my husband when he was commuting 90 minutes every day, back and forth 90 miles, to a job for a season. And he said, I'm not going to turn on the radio. Lord, what do you want me to learn? And this was what he learned. We have since met other ministries that had that very similar guidelines, praying for those people, praying with them, doing your job with excellence. So we believe that it's from the Lord, and it's not always easy to pray for the people that you work with, especially when you just didn't get a promotion or, whatever might have happened, but we can't stay angry at people that we're praying for. And so it's one of the things God molds in our own lives. So the I Work for Him Nation, very practical step that helps you to care for those that you are working with and for.
We will certainly be linking to that in our show notes. So if that is something that you're like, I want to learn more about, be sure to check that out at iworkforhim.com.
.com.
iworkforhim.com. So, but anyway, we will link for that in our show notes. So we got a shortcut for you right there. So Martha, I Work for Him is such a wealth of resources in general, but do you have any other resources that you're aware of that you would recommend as we learn more about leading with care or just leadership in general that's helped you?
Oh my goodness. We have a couple different things I kind of sometimes forget that are on our website, but we actually have a performance review that is out there that people can use if they just need a guideline. It's just one approach. It's not for everybody. Also, we have our book lists. So books that we love and, that have helped us in the journey. And a lot of them are not the ones that, that are necessarily releasing right now, and ones that we've interviewed on, which are excellent, but maybe ones in our own journey, maybe starting 20 years ago, the E-Myth and, Halftime and some of these books that really help to form me as a leader. I have my book list out there, and it'll be kind of fun. I should go check it and see if there's anything new I need to add to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's just a good place to curate, ideas of what I love.
Awesome. We will certainly be linking to those as well in our show notes. Martha, it's just been such a joy having you on the show and talking to you and learning more about you. How else can we connect? How can our listeners connect with you and the work that you do outside of iworkforhim.com?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I would love for people to connect with me on Facebook. I'm a Facebook person. So just look for me on Facebook and we can be friends and just follow along in life. I mean, I saw your family picture recently, Jane, and it's great because when we quote unquote, know people and then we see things that are happening socially in their lives, we can just feel like we're staying up to date a little bit, even if it's digitally, to know what's going on. And, iworkforhim.com, you can get to me, one way or another. And I'm happy to connect with people. I love Polished. I love what you guys are doing. And I'm just grateful that, if God can use any one thing that I might have said today to help somebody a little further along in their leadership and faith journey, I hope it's been worth it.
Oh, it certainly has. And I just thank you so much for just coming on the show and sharing your heart with us. We just love you and the work you do and everything about you. Martha Brangenberg's story has inspired me to think about leaving a lasting impact through my work. Leading with care isn't just a leadership style. It has the power to touch others' lives, creating a ripple effect that can bring positive change to the world around us. Do you have a different takeaway from today's conversation? And if so, let me know. Share your thoughts for this episode on our Instagram post, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can go right ahead and hop in the comments below. Let's continue this dialogue on leading with care. As we wrap up this episode, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who plays a role in making the Polished podcast a reality. The Polished podcast is made possible in part by the generous support of Coca-Cola Consolidated. Thank you, Martha Brangenberg, for your example of what it looks like to work in such a way that leaves a lasting legacy that makes impact in the world around us. To our loyal listeners, your unwavering support and your engagement drive us to deliver content that resonates and emboldens. Thank you, Polished Network, for creating a nurturing community where women in the workforce can thrive and connect. A big thank you to White Oak Christian Church for their partnership and contributions to the productions of these episodes. And as we move beyond the discussion of leading with care, I want to encourage us to consider the invitation God is teaching us throughout this series. And if you're not sure where to start, consider this.
Pray for the people that you work with.
If you're seeking a supportive community for your faith and work journey, I'd love to encourage you to join us on social media and our YouTube channel. Stay updated with our latest content. You can do that by liking and subscribing and taking a moment to rate and review the Polished podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your engagement means a lot, and it helps us create content that is meaningful for you. Well, until next time, friends, this is Jane Doerman signing off. Keep moving forward and remain emboldened.